Hey everybody, Christopher here.
Hey guys, Noah here.
Are we actually talking about something that's not controversial tonight?
Well, I don't know. I think it depends on whether you liked OSR series or you didn't like OSR series. Because
We can turn
if
anything controversial.
anything can technically be controversial, depends on whether you like what we did, whether you believe in it. It depends. You know what I mean? I think there's going to be both sides of the spectrum, no matter what.
I mean, I'm going to say I like what we did.
I liked it. I mean, it's a little bit biased coming from me because I'm the one that made it, but like, I liked it. I thought it was okay.
I'm still saying that in just the two series that you put out there, there's been a big difference in your editing. You're coming a long ways.
I appreciate that. And the cool thing for me is like I didn't go like I haven't I mean and it's kind of obvious cuz like while I think it's getting better, obviously I'm not a professional in any sort of way, but I didn't go to school for this or anything. I am very self-taught in the editing, the filming of it, like everything. Everything is very self-taught. So um having that little bit of growth and then having people tell me that they can see it means a lot. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're doing great. I mean, only way to go is up.
Right. Well, there's always down, but we're not going to go that way. We're just going to keep going up.
So, since we're talking about our OSR series, what was your whole thought process leading up to the title of the series?
Oh, that's a great question, actually, because like I feel like the reason in which I name things the way that they are is I want to be very unique in what we do. You know, I don't want anybody to look at our stuff and say that like, oh, they're just doing the same thing that somebody else is doing. I want us to be very unique in the way we do things. So that's why like first off, the way in which we film the videos or edit them, it's very much more in a movie style format because I feel like that's a little bit unique. But also it's kind of like I don't know. It's just like I've never looked at. I don't want to name things just like oh the time I did this or the time I had this happen, something like that. So it's like oh I want it to be more like a movie that you're being told a story. Like there's a story that's involved in everything that we're doing, and this journey is essentially us telling you that story. And so with this one, I was really trying to be unique because the first series that came out was Bill Manor when timelines collide, and I was like, that what brought me to that was the fact that like we had all these different eras that weren't like they were separate, but they also ended up connecting in the end because like we may have had one spirit from one timeline help us with another one and it was like oh like when timelines collide I felt like that was unique and cool so like for the second one I was like what is something that is going to be unique and is going to really kind of summarize what happened that investigation. And I was actually thinking of the movie Trains, Planes, and Automobiles at the time, and that's where I was like, oh, we're in a prison, so gangs, chains, and who's Jane, because that was the first episode or film series in which Jane actually came through and started talking to us. Because as the Bill Manor series ends, like it ends on a cliffhanger in the sense of we get told that I have a spirit guide, and then it just blows up from there because then my spirit guides ends up showing up in OSR, and it just kind of steamrolls from there. And that's so weird to say now too, because now with all the locations that we've gone to and all the film series that are going to be coming out throughout the year and probably even some next year, all the movie series that are going to be coming out at this point, Jane has become such a important figure in every investigation we do. It's so weird to think like, oh, that was like the first time we ever encountered her, really, or not for you encountered her, but for me it was. So like it was the very first time I had really directly talked to her in the Estes method. So it was crazy.
Right. And, maybe I can talk more about my first encounter with her when we get to our Stark Saloon episodes.
Right.
since that's where I actually met her the first time. So we can hold on to that.
Right. Absolutely.
I will say that I'm really excited for people to see how her layers unfold in our upcoming episodes as we're learning things like she's got a sense of humor.
Yes, very. She has a huge sense of humor, and it's mostly at my expense, but I'm okay with it. It's fun.
I don't even know what to say to that. I was going to try to add to that somehow, but I don't have to.
Right? Oh, it's like some of the things I really want to talk about with her that's funny, but at the same time, I'm trying to be very cautious in what I say and how I say, only because there's so many film series that are getting ready to come out, and I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. I want them to experience it as it's unfolding, the same way that it happened for us in that real time.
Right.
And one of the big things that I guess I wanted to talk about today, because we're going to kind of unfold the layers of OSR, that film series, and kind of look behind the scenes and stuff like that. But I also really just want to put it out there that the cool thing is that while Bill Manor was very important for some of the things that we're working on, but it was very like it was kind of like just little breadcrumbs of stuff that we're doing and stuff like that. But OSR is the part one to a much bigger series in two ways. One, we have literally this, I'm going to call it an umbrella because all of these investigations that we're doing is under this umbrella, and the main storyline that we're doing is the umbrella itself, and everything kind of weirdly connects, and people will see this as the movies come out and as the investigation continues. And this is something that's not even done. We're to this day still currently working on this whole storyline, so that's why it's still unfolding in such weird ways, and that's why I'm excited for people to see it. But then you have, on a sub layer of that, OSR was the first film series to connect to the Monkey Room series.
Right.
And as people will see, it is very much OSR is part one. Madison Seminary, which is the next film series that's getting ready to come out, that's part two. And then whenever we go to the Fairfield County Infirmary, that is very much the part three and conclusion to the Monkey Room storyline.
At least we think it is. I mean, we're going to be back there in a few weeks.
True. Very, very true. We could always go back and be like, oh, shit, we're not done with that specifically, but we think we are at this point in time.
No, I agree with that. Yeah, I don't want to say too much, but
I don't either, and that's kind of like that's what makes this hard, because the only thing I can say, and it's always like it's always, I know it's frustrating for people because they just want to know, but at the same time I'm like, I don't want to give it away because I want you to experience it in the way that we experienced it, because I think it just adds to the experience so much, being surprised by the way that things connect. But you just have to trust me in the sense of you're like the story is going to make sense when everything keeps going. Like I said, OSR part one, as you saw in there, the mentions of the Monkey Room and first hearing from the character Vince and stuff like that, it is very much part one. Madison is going to be part two, and then Fairfield County Infirmary is part three in that storyline.
Yeah, it's exciting. I can't wait for people to see it. I do have to wonder if anybody who did watch the OSR series didn't quite understand why I was wearing the hat.
I think so too, and that is a failure on my part. I completely forgot in the episode where that first came out. I meant to put in something there that said what it was, but I completely spaced on it and forgot to do it because, again, I forgot that like other people don't know what that is. So I'll let you explain.
Well, let me explain. I'm not wearing that just because I look good in it. I know I do, but there's so much more to it than that. I am wearing that because I am absolutely terrified of bats. They're my greatest fear in this world, and they keep them away from my face. I've never seen a bat while wearing it, so I can't promise how I'll react. Maybe I'll be okay. Maybe I'll just be able to keep walking like nothing's happening. Maybe I'll still react the same way. I don't know. But the intention was for it to keep the bats out of my face. I bought that before my return trip to Moundsville last year. I was going to Moundsville for the second time. And after I had a complete shit attack in solitary, like a bat flew in front of me and I turned around to leave and I saw how the exit narrowed and I could hear one between me and the door. And I like collapsed. I couldn't move. I couldn't get out of there. I had to have someone help me. I was just paralyzed.
Oh my.
But I really wanted to go back there because that place is so amazing.
Right.
So I ended up buying the hat. And I wore the hat for the first time at Moundsville. Didn't see a bat the whole night. I've never seen a bat while wearing that hat.
That's awesome. Moundsville is really special for me too because Moundsville was really my very first official investigation like ever. Like I'd done little stuff here and there like, but like the very first place that I ever filmed was at Moundsville. So that place will always have a special place in my heart. Also, it's like not far from my house. It's like 35 minutes away from my house. So it's really local. And I'm so excited to go back there this November. So excited.
That place is so amazing. I mean, I'll never get sick of it.
So I think that maybe what we should do for kind of like dissecting OSR is take it part by part. So we'll obviously start with part one. What were your general thoughts and feelings with part one, with everything that happened with part one?
The biggest standout of the whole thing to me was our very first interaction with the man who'd been involved in the gang.
Yes.
You had a lot more to do with that interaction than I do. And honestly, I just had a great time standing there and watching you work through that. The way you did that was so fucking cool. And just the way you handled it, I had a whole completely new respect for you after watching you do that. The way you did that and the way you connected so personally was purely epic.
Wow, that's cool.
That was so cool to watch you do that.
That makes me feel good. I guess we never really talked about that interaction that way, but
no, because we were just focused on the rest of the night, and at that point we still had a mission. We had to find Clarence, so
right,
we were focused.
Yeah, that was just one of those moments that I just think I connected with in the way I did, just because that's what I do. Like, I work at a prison for my day job, and so it's one of those things. I feel like I understand very much some of the things that he would have been feeling. And I was able to just use my experience and how I am able to talk to people that are incarcerated at, in today's world, and, how they might be feeling. And it's one of those things that, like, the thing that's kind of weird or hard to understand maybe for people that don't work in a prison or anything like that, or understand that side of things, is that my general belief system is that nobody that is in prison is truly innocent. And let me explain why I say that. And it's like, don't come at me for this. It's just that, like, because even if we can agree that, like, something like what somebody did wasn't quite as bad as what they made it out to be, or maybe something like they don't know the whole story of what happened. In my experience, however, there's always a reason in which you put yourself in that sort of scenario. Like, things just didn't, like, you're not just there because now the only case that I could say is that, like, somebody got framed. You know what I mean? They actually had nothing to do with what happened, and they were just framed for something. That's the only one that I'll say that, like, oh yeah, then you're just completely innocent and you don't need to be there at all. But I will tell you that is a lot more rare than what the media makes it out to be. That I don't actually even know if I've ever even encountered that where somebody was truly purely innocent. And like, because everything that people does, there's consequences for it. You chose to do certain things to put you where you need to be. Like, for instance, like, let's say that somebody got in a car accident and killed somebody, and it's like, and they're like, yeah, that was just a freak accident. But it's like, at the same time, 9 times out of 10, that person that got in the car accident and they went to prison was under the influence of something. Because
Right.
you don't just go to prison because you got in a car accident and killed somebody. If you're in a car accident and you killed somebody, but the police are able to say that, like, this person wasn't under the influence, they weren't doing anything illegal, that it just was a freak accident, you don't go to prison for that.
Right.
You go to prison because they proved that, for some, like, you were under the influence of something, you were doing something illegal, like going 110 in a fucking zone or whatever. Like, you did something that was purely illegal, and then something that terrible happened. So therefore, you chose to do something that winded you up here.
Right.
So that's why I say that. Like, and people might be mad at me for that, but it is what it is. And it's just one of those things. I've seen too much, I've heard too much for me to think otherwise. Like, I have a different perspective for those things because that's what I do every day. I actually see the reality of what that stuff is rather than what you're being told on social media. And so when we're standing in that cell and we're connecting to him, I was just able to look at it in that perspective of that, like, he didn't necessarily do exactly, like, he was involved in the situation that ended up killing that person, but he's not the one that pulled the trigger. So I can see that, like, you weren't the one that you weren't the person that killed that person, but you were involved. So no matter what, you have to take responsibility for your actions that led you to that place. So I just tried to do my best in the sense of connecting to that emotionally and explaining to him my whole thought process on that, to give him any sort of way that he could move on from that.
Right. You know, in a way, it reminds me of a previous interaction I'd had there before we filmed there. I know I made reference to, if you see a dead bird, let me know. I know I said that. Was that in part one?
Yes, that was in part one.
Did I ever explain why I said that, or did I just throw that out there?
I think so. From what I remember, I think in that moment, no. You just kind of said it, and you did your famous line of, like, I'm going to hold on to that for right now. But I do think later on in one of the other parts, it's brought back up and it kind of explains, like, what the bird was referencing. And it was whenever we were talking. I think it was like whenever we were talking to um, Ida and stuff. Is, I think, when that, like, came back up.
Right.
And I think it was explained a little bit more.
And the cell, too, outside of which I'd found the dead bird, which, just to clarify for other people, the reason the dead bird was significant to me is because it's the death card in my tarot deck that I use most frequently. The image of the death card is a skeletal bird, just skeleton and feathers. That's it. And I saw that on a window ledge there. And the first thing I thought was, it's the death card. Somebody has a story to tell. I think in part 3, didn't I actually ask Jane to take someone to that cell, to that person?
Yes.
They could help them?
I think, yeah, that might be what I'm remembering too, is that, like, that's where it might have come up again too. Like, where you asked Jane to specifically take someone to that cell because they were somebody that could help them in their healing process.
Right. And the whole thing I'd gotten from that man when I initially connected to him through the dead bird on the window ledge, he was not a bad person. He made a bad decision, and he was there paying the price for his bad decision. Another thing that came through my work with him was that while he was there, he had a way about him that just made life a little bit better for people.
Right.
Like, it seemed to me like all of the guards or anybody that worked there liked him. He was a good guy. If any of the inmates were having issues, he had a way of making it better. He was a good guy. And in that moment, after connecting to him, I remember thinking, do you want to go? You've done your time. Can I help you leave here? You shouldn't have ended up back here after your death. This isn't right.
Right.
And that's not something I normally do.
Right.
But he told me no. He didn't want to go. He wanted to stay there and continue doing what he always did, helping people.
Right, which makes it makes sense. That was kind of like what he felt that his purpose was.
Now I'm going to throw out a story there from the Crescent Sanatorium in prison in Crescent, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
I think I've told you the story of when I met Denise from the Cryptic Paranormal podcast. I was being introduced to her that night, like someone brought the two of us together. I looked at her, I held up my hand, and I said, "Hi, I'm going this way." And I turned around and I just wandered off. And she's standing there like, "What?" And there was another woman in the hallway that I didn't know that saw what I did. And she's like, "I'm going to go on this adventure." And she followed me, not knowing me nor where I was going. I spent an hour wandering buildings, going through underground tunnels, getting absolutely lost until I ended up in a particular cell block and in one particular cell.
Oh, wow.
And I encountered a man in that cell who did not belong there.
Oh.
He was one of those, whether he was framed, like you mentioned, maybe he was. But I knew in my heart from the interaction, he did not belong there. He did not do what they said he did.
Mm-hmm.
I did help him to leave. And as we were leaving that cell, we were about to go down the upper catwalk, down the stairs, and we both saw this black, mass come around the corner and stop in front of us. And what I got from it was, I see what you just did. Now it's my turn. Help me. And everything I got from it was like, no, there's a very good reason you were here. And everything I'm feeling right now, this is where you're going to stay. And it just dissipated.
Wow. Wow. That's cool.
We may even have somewhere a picture that shows the black mass. There may be a picture out there somewhere. I'll have to see if I can find it.
Yeah, that was a really cool story. And then to kind of segue back into part one, the next part of that, once we finished talking to Albert and we got back into everything, that was when we moved to kind of like the little main hall area on the level that we were on.
Right.
And we first connected with Jane. She actually came through the Estes method. And it was important for two reasons. The first one was, it was really when the monkey room started getting referenced. And how we were told very importantly that you and I unintentionally opened doorways when we weren't even together as far as Crooked Path Paranormal. This was separate. It was different times,
right?
Which was weird. We were told hey, you got to go take care of this, right? Which where the mind that I opened is at Madison, so people will get to see us fix what I did in the next film series, and then the one that you had was at Fairfield with the monkey room.
Right.
And so there's that part of the Estes method that was so cool and it was so important to everything that we were doing. But then there's the other side of that where, because that was the first actual time that I was directly communicating with Jane and I knew who she was and we knew what the intentions was and everything, she told me that on my spiritual journey, she was going to be testing me to essentially get me more in tune with my own spiritual gifts, but also more in tune with her, which kind of like you said at the beginning of this, we're definitely seeing in real time, because the more and more that I think I get in tune with my spiritual connection with my spiritual nature and her, even her interactions with us is changing, in the sense of she's coming much more personal and joking with us and stuff like that, and it's cool and fun to see. But this was the first time she ever did, and it was so cool because she started telling me things, and then she started like testing me in the sense of like, she would say something that wasn't quite true, and the whole part was me noticing that that wasn't true. And then like she started like making me feel things, as far as like she would literally say, like, whenever I'd feel like this general like feel of love and compassion, that that was her. And then when I would feel something that was very negative, it wasn't her. And she was like, understand the deception. So I would know going forward, like, I know when it's you because this is what I feel. And I had never before that experienced anything of that nature. So having that moment was just so cool. So, and I know for you on that part, you're under the Estes method, so that's where like you're there but you're not there. And so I really want to hear from your side of things when watching that back. Like, what did it make you feel, or what did you think of that?
When I watch it back, it's like my absolute first time seeing it or experiencing it. Because when I'm under, I'm gone. I'm not there. I'm asleep, or I've left my body and I've gone on this little astral travel.
Right.
I know that happens because one night I ended up somewhere very specific. That was not with you. That didn't happen. That was, they couldn't get me back for like 2 hours.
Right.
But there were different circumstances around that. No, it was interesting to me to watch and to see the similarities in how my guides have done the same or similar things with me, the same types of tests to recognize deception and to recognize certain feelings. I mean, I remember that process with one of my particular guides very, very well.
Wow.
It almost makes me wonder if there's like a handbook that they have to follow, that there's certain protocols that take everyone through.
Right. Like, yeah, that's like, you have to like, and it's crazy because I remember the stories that you've told me of how that happened.
Right.
And it's kind of like, it's interesting that they're not the same, even in the way that your guide made you understand deception. It was different, but similar at the same time. So it's interesting that like they might do different things for different people, just because like people are going to understand it differently.
Right. I mean, for me, he used the Ouija board, which is a perfectly natural way to get my attention. I'll know when something's wrong there. I mean,
right. For me,
I don't know of anybody that uses the board as much as I do.
No,
I love it.
I've definitely never met anybody that uses it the way in which you do it or how much you do it. And I guess for me, that's where like my big thing is the feeling side of things. That's the ability that I'm the most in tune with. I'm not going to say I'm 100% in tune with it, because like I still have moments where I'm kind of confused, but that's the one I've had the most experience with, and I guess I don't even realize that until now with all the things that we've been doing.
Right. No, I really enjoyed watching that. Like I said, I didn't remember any of it because I wasn't there. But
yeah, that was cool. I love that. That's awesome.
I'm really excited to see more of her personality unfolding based on the things you've been telling me after the sessions.
Yes. And that's the one thing that does kind of suck on your end, in the sense of like a lot of those, like I tell you right after we do one what happened and stuff, and I try to do my best to explain everything. But yeah, you don't really get to experience it on that side until the film series comes out, especially because like right now we're so busy, and like we're always like, oh, we got to go to the next thing, we got to get this done, we got to get that done. And so we don't really oftentimes have the time to just plug it into a computer and like watch that session back over.
Right. Wasn't there something that came up in the night at OSR where Zeke had been coming through?
Yes, Zeke had came through, and I don't remember if this was actually in the film series.
I don't think it was, which is fine. That's no problem. I mean, there's no way to fit everything in. But I remember coming out of one of the sessions and you telling me that Zeke had come through. And it was like right at that moment that I turned around and there were people behind us. And one of the people is the person who's most connected to when Zeke first came through for me. I remember you telling me about that session and I turned around like, oh, no wonder he came through. I just remember having that moment.
And I think like there was a few reasons why like that portion, which I'll kind of explain what happened, I guess, which you kind of did in a way, but the reason it didn't make it into the film series was because we were doing the Estes method, and Zeke came through essentially, and at that point in time, I didn't know who Zeke was. And I didn't know that whole story. So I'm actually at that point, like, I'm like, I don't know who you are, and I'm like, I don't know what your intentions are or anything like that. And he ended up saying Kennedy's name during the
Right.
thing, and I was like, oh, are you here to like what do you want with Kennedy? Like, are you here to harm her or anything? And he said, never. Now looking back, it makes sense. But at that time, I was kind of like, I don't know what any of this is like a part of, and it has nothing to do with what we were talking about. And it wasn't there very long. He literally came in to talk for a second about Kennedy and then was gone.
Right. And I remember afterward when you told me about it, I turned around and they were behind us.
Right. And the part of that like the part of the reason why I didn't make it in, because I would have, if I would have had this, I would have kept it in. But the part where we explained, or you explained to me what that meant, we didn't film that. That was like,
Right.
I had already turned off the camera because we were getting ready to take a break real quick. I had turned off the camera, so that's where I was like, oh shit, I don't have the story now to explain what that is. So that really would have made absolute no sense to anybody watching that. So I ended up just leaving that out. And I
Right.
figured that's something that in other movies will actually explain who that person is, because that is a big part of who you are and that needs explained. But
Right.
that part it wasn't going to do it justice. So I was like, I'm going to leave that out for now.
This is either going to simplify things or it's going to complicate things. Essentially, the meat suit that Zeke's wife is in was roaming freely about OSR. That's what brought him through.
Right. That for people, if you know, you know. If you know, you know.
How many times this week can I use the word meat suit?
It's like almost needs to be a challenge. How many times can you use that?
I mean, the other day we were talking about meat suit rental.
Right. Oh my. But yeah, that was pretty much it for part one. This kind of leads us into part two, which part two is interesting in two ways. We yet again went to solitary confinement and was able to connect yet again with another inmate that was at that prison, and we got to help him in his storyline, and we'll kind of talk about that for a second. So, what did you think about that interaction with Walter?
Other than the fact that I was standing there in the hallway of solitary, terrified because people had told us that there were bats down there.
Right.
I think that entire interaction is one of the most surprising turns. I don't want to say ever, but just the whole direction that took threw me off so badly. I mean, I never in a million years expected that to go the direction it did.
Right. Right. I mean, especially because like whenever we got like there was a child and she was like 9 and stuff like that, and I'm like, why is there a little child, a little girl, even just to further that? Like, why is there a little girl here at this prison? Like that makes
Right.
absolutely no sense in any way. But to find out that that was Walter's daughter, and that whole story that unfolded was just, and it was like looking back at it too when I was editing it, I like the way I was feeling things in that cell, and I didn't even really know it. I was feeling what he was feeling. And I think I mentioned at one point while sitting there, I was like, this is really hitting me right now. And
Right.
at the time, I didn't even really understand that because I still was very much new to understanding the emotions I was feeling
Right.
or where they were coming from, really. And that's what's like, for anybody that has empathic abilities, it's like why, I highly suggest that people look into it and try to understand it, because I know most of my life there was a lot of instances where I didn't understand why I felt a certain way, or I didn't understand that maybe that feeling wasn't actually coming from me. I was feeling somebody else's feelings, and I didn't know how to really understand it or even deal with it at that point. And
Right.
so that was a cool moment looking back at that for me, because now, like sitting where I'm at now, I'm still not an expert in it, but I do understand it much better than I used to. Like I'm starting to understand maybe like when I'm not feeling something for me and I'm feeling for something for somebody else.
Right. That makes sense.
It's starting to blur the lines a little bit.
It's interesting when there's two different spirits who are closely connected involved and you start feeling things from both sides.
Right, and it becomes confusing because on one end you're very sad or something like that, and the other side you might be very happy, and you're like, how am I feeling these two different emotions at the same time? Like, and it
Right.
becomes like a big soup. To reference you for a second.
There needs to be a t-shirt about the soup.
There's gonna be lots of T-shirts. I feel like
I know. The
the
meat
one that
suit, the soup.
to the morgue, that needs to be one,
That's got to come sooner rather than later.
right?
Did I ever actually explain that on one of these? Why that's a thing?
I don't know, but that's also because like that wasn't even a thing that like people will see in the sense of, because like that's not something that we were together
Right.
for and filmed. So
Right.
I don't think so.
Probably not. I'm going to throw it out there anyway. So
Yeah.
essentially, I was giving a tour at the Fairfield County Infirmary. I was down on the first floor. I think we were just leaving the doctor's office. We were going to go across the hall to the next room, and I got very excited about where I was taking everybody. I became very animated as I exclaimed, "To the morgue!" And
Oh
all
my.
throughout the rest of the night, because it was one of my psychic public hunts, people kept saying "to the morgue," and it just became a thing. And I've received that comment from people on posts that weren't even there that night. So it's just taking off.
Right. I'm excited for that. One of these days we'll have to, like, whenever we're off on a, like, I don't know, maybe the next time we get together we'll be like on a 3-day bender together. So like maybe we'll have time to at some point sit down and actually get the merchant line up and running.
Right.
Maybe. I don't know. It's hard whenever we're just constantly busy off doing stuff.
I
We don't
know.
really have a lot of leisure time to just sit around and do something.
Right.
But yeah, I want to get that out there so then I can also make the to the morgue shirt and get those ordered.
Absolutely.
I need to start filling my closet with different Crooked Path merchandise.
Everybody needs to start filling their closet with different Crooked Path merchandise. Just
Everyone,
saying.
yeah, everyone needs to do this. But yeah, so the way in which that storyline with Walter kind of played out, it definitely was very very interesting. But even more so, the second part of that film, it doesn't even end. It just we kind of started it,
Right.
and then it gets left on a cliffhanger because you know me, I love cliffhangers. I like to build the suspense. So
Right.
it gets left on a cliffhanger that leads into part three, and this will be kind of like the segue into it. And we start talking to Ida and her search with Carl and everything, and that to me was like, even I think even a bigger surprise, because when we went in there to do that, I had no idea that her whole intention was for us to aid her in getting revenge, and that's where we kind of had to shut that down and like, I'm not interested in doing that. I'm not doing that. We're just not going to.
I'm almost shocked that I didn't somehow sense or feel that on an intuitive level. I don't know how I didn't. She must have just masterfully hid her intentions.
Right. I mean, I think to me it makes sense because it's the same thing that we do. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like we disguise our intentions sometimes to get what we want, and I think that the spirits can do that as well. So that's where it's like, that's where that would have came from.
Right. It was just so difficult because, I mean, obviously in no way am I going to help her on her quest for revenge, but at
Right.
the same time I completely understand why she feels the way she does.
Right, and that's the thing that like we had to set aside because it's like I can understand being that angry about something that happened that was that terrible. I can understand that. But the thing about it is that you have to learn to like if all you do is feed into the negativity, nothing's ever going to get better. It's just going to get worse and worse and worse, and that's where like you have to learn to understand that.
Right.
Which, not to give anything away, but here on an investigation that we just did, like literally a couple days ago, in the most surprising turn of events I think I've ever had, because I had no clue this was going to happen. We actually ended up reconnecting to Ida in, funny enough, there where Ida's hometown was.
And I can give this much because it's not even about our upcoming investigation. It's about when I first connected to Ida. When I went to the old Licking County Jail and tried to connect to Carl after being told he never, ever, ever comes through, well, I did not get him. I got Ida, and I landed in his childhood home with his mother. When we got to where we were this past weekend and she came through and I did a little digging and realized, oh, their hometown is here. It's not that far away.
Right.
Then it makes sense.
It made a
So,
little bit more sense why she would show up there.
right,
And I can at least say, like, without giving too much away of that interaction with her, she is in a much better place where she was when we first encountered her. And it was a much better conversation, and I will say that we were able to very much help her in what she needed at that point in time. And it was nice because, like, the last time that we had left her was kind of on a sour note, in the sense of we were able to help her a little bit in understanding why we weren't going to do what she wanted us to do. But, we, at that point in time, we weren't really able to help her. But reconnecting with her in a point where she is in a much better place and we were able to help her was very cool. It was a cool moment.
it was. I feel better knowing where it went as opposed to where it was. So people will just have to stay tuned and find out for themselves.
Right. And then I know during that session too, we kept having the name Jimmy come up, and it's always interesting too, like how that it always seems to be we'll be working on something, and one of our devices will say a name, and it'll just be thrown out there. And how I think I always determine what maybe we need to focus on is like we'll get a name, like say Jimmy, right? And then later on, we'll get a full sentence of like Jimmy wants to talk, or you know what I mean? Or not
Right,
Jimmy, Jeremy is his name. Jeez,
right.
there's been so many names. I'm like, sorry, Jeremy. I apologize for that. Not Jimmy, Jeremy. But Jeremy came through, and it was like Jeremy. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm gonna hold on to that name. And then it goes to Jeremy wants to talk, or Jeremy is angry, or whatever. It's different sometimes depending on what they want. But it's always like, oh, now I'm getting their name used in a full sentence. Like, so
Right.
this must be important. So let's dive down that. And then 9 times out of 10, it ends up being very, very important with what we're doing. So that's where we ended up going. We were told that he was like a layer or a level below us. So we're like, okay, cool. Let's like go down there to talk to him. And we get to the gate or the little like section there, and it's like completely closed off, even like locked with a padlock. So we're like, oh shit, well, can't go there. So we were kind of like, oh, let's go to the main hall room and just kind of collect our thoughts for a second of like what we're going to do. And then we kind of was like, oh, I wonder if Jane could go and get him to come talk to us here. And that's what we ended up doing, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's something people will see more of too when we need to go get someone.
Yeah, that it happens a lot from that point on, and it's very useful in how we're able to help different spirits and stuff like that. And that's where it gets brought up again about like maybe through Jeremy's healing, he needs to go and talk to the person where you found the dead bird's room, just so that way maybe he can start to self heal. And it was very interesting. It was like the moment that again I was talking to Jeremy, and I get on the thing Vince, right, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna hold on to that. I continue talking to Jeremy, and then it's like Vince is angry and Vince wants to talk. It said something like that,
Right.
and I was like, okay, I'll play along. I'll talk to Vince. So as soon as basically we were done talking to Jeremy, and the funny thing about it was Jane even kind of said beforehand when we were getting ready to talk to Vince was that because like we were kind of like, I don't know if I need to talk directly to Vince or if I need to talk to Jane about Vince. And Jane was kind of like, oh, you need to talk to Vince, but be cautious about it. And at that
Right.
point, I just knew like something wasn't quite right about this. And so we put you under the Estes method, and the whole thing just shifts.
Yeah, that was something to watch, especially that laugh.
Dude, that like creeped me out sitting there. Like I'm just like, are your intentions bad? And he just laughs. I'm like,
I watched that over and over again.
yeah, that was a little creepy. But that was the moment, that Estes method right there. Like the first Estes method in part one was kind of like we get a little bit of the breadcrumbs as far as like, hey, there's something important with this monkey room. We need to do something. But that Estes method with Vince was the one that really I think turned the tides of like,
Right.
it's way more important than we even imagined. And Vince was a lot more connected. Well, he was obviously very connected with the monkey room itself, but also like his story more comes unfolded in Madison. So like there is a layer of Vince that like even at that point we were very confused on who this person was. We didn't really know a lot about Vince.
Right.
So there wasn't much that we could say because we were just like, Vince is telling me all these things, but I have no clue who the hell Vince is other than what he's telling us. And it's like, is part of that deception? Like, I don't know.
Right.
His story, though, gets a lot more unfolded in Madison. So I'm excited for people to see that. But just the way in which that all unfolded was so weird. So weird.
Yeah, it's always interesting when multiple people are coming through in the same session. When I watch those back, it's like, what?
Yeah, and like the way that you can tell a lot too based off of like how you're talking or the mannerisms and stuff like that. Like it's very interesting. You can tell a lot of times who you're talking to and who you're not, and that helps me and understand like who it is that I'm talking to. And I remember at one point the conversation with Vince wasn't really going anywhere because Vince wasn't giving me what I needed. You know, he was
Right.
refusing to say certain things. So Lisa ended up coming through, which was cool.
Yeah. Yeah, usually when she comes through, it's not when she's been called or you've asked for her. She's there.
She's just there. Yeah, she's just there. And then there's a lot of times where Jane and her kind of piggyback off of each other.
Right.
Which is really cool to see.
Not really related to OSR, but I've got a potentially really good idea and bad idea all at the same time. My guide that I usually communicate with on the board I wonder if he'd be willing to come through under an Estes session one day.
You know what's funny? I've always kind of wondered that and thought that, but I guess I'd never really asked because I was just kind of like, I don't know, I don't know. Like I was kind of like, I don't want to just like use your guide like that, like. So I've never asked, but I mean, I would like to see.
How's it any different from using the meat suit? Like the other day when I said, I feel so used.
So for people that don't understand that, to kind of give some context behind that, and I won't say too much of what happened during this session because it'll be in an episode, but we got done with something that we were working on, and I was just kind of like, oh, I've never really just sat down and like just had a straight on conversation with Jane about anything like that wasn't like really important. It was just things I wanted to know. And so I sat there for the next, like, I don't even know how long it was, and just sat there and talked to Jane for the longest time. And Jane ended up poking some fun at me and stuff like that. And it was fun. It was fun. But I pull him out of the Estes method, and I'm telling this whole thing, and he just starts laughing. He's like, I feel so used.
Which led me to the whole concept of like meat suit rental by the hour or by the night.
Right. I don't know, just like in the same way I think that like the other day you asked me like, hey, is it okay if I ask Jane directly? And I was kind of like, yeah, like I absolutely, like you don't really need to ask me that. Like I think that's just the same. It's kind of like a respect thing. It's like I don't want to just assume that like I can just ask your guide directly, but that's where like so you and I actually feel the same way about that. We just never really talked about that, but that's the same way. Like I ask you to ask your guide because I don't want to just like jump in there and be like, hey, what's up? Like,
right.
But I think it'll be interesting too because there will be the layer of because his name isn't really out there for specific reasons.
Right.
It'll be interesting on how he'll let me know that it is him.
Right.
So I would, if that is something that you want to do, I'm very open and interested to try that. And see
I would like to try it. I think it could be very entertaining.
Especially because based on our theories of like, I don't want to say who he is or what he is, but like the way that your spirit guide is much different than my spirit guide in the sense of we believe that your spirit guide never actually was a person and is more of just a spirit. Again, I don't really know how to make that make sense other than what I just said. Right. I don't even know if we fully understand it, but we've been led to believe that he was never really a person, where Jane very much was a person.
Right. So
the way in which he even even in the stuff that Jane knows and can tell us, what he knows and is able to tell us is it feels even beyond that. It feels even greater. So I'd be interested to see the information he could give us.
Me too. I'm definitely willing to try it. Well, I mean, all I can do is ask him. He'll either say yes or no.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll ask him on the board before we do it, but
knowing him, he'll probably say no, and then one day he'll just surprise.
But like, who are you? And he'll just be, and again, because he won't tell me he won't say his name, but he'll be like, you know. And I'll be like, oh, well, hello.
I'm going to try this to see if these pictures will turn out if I show these. So this is the death card, the dead bird.
Yeah.
And I'm throwing this out there just for a point of reference. Just this past Saturday, I came across another one.
Right. That's weird.
So because of what happened at OSR, every time I see one now, if it's in just the skeletal and feathered form, I always take it as a sign. I will admit I wrapped it and took it with me. Don't judge. I'm a witch.
Right. No, I definitely don't. I definitely don't judge you at this
Oh,
point.
I know. That wasn't directed to you. That was anybody that hurt is going to hear me say that and raise their eyebrow.
Well, and I can understand it on one level because the way in which we do things is so weird compared
Right.
to how other people do things. So
Don't worry. The dead bird is not going in the soup that was referenced.
dead bird soup. But
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like that pretty much brings the OSR film series to a close. And what
Yeah, that might be a good note to wrap up on. Dead bird
happened,
soup.
dead bird soup, right? Yeah, it just kind of brings it to an end, and I'm really excited to see where the editing of the next movies goes and stuff like that. I'm so excited to get those film series out there, and I'm actually still currently working on what I want to name the Madison Seminary like series. I'm still workshopping that name, so I can't wait to kind of like do what I did with OSR, where I just surprise you with like, hey, what do you think of this?
Yeah, I'm sure whatever you come up with will be great.
Hopefully, we'll see. But yeah, I'm gonna still workshop it. But I'm currently working on that film series right now, so I'm hoping to get part one done here within a couple weeks or so. I'm hoping anyway. So hopefully everything goes well. But yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed OSR series, and I can't express enough how much I enjoy doing all this stuff for everybody, and I just hope that they do enjoy it. Also, I do want to throw out here real quick because Kim's probably going to be mad. I don't have the Red Solo Cup today. I don't have any Red Solo Cups right now. So unless Red Solo Cup would like to like sponsor us and like give me free Red Solo Cups, I don't have any. But I do have a cool cup. I have my limited edition Shooter McGavin cup from the Happy Gilmore movie.
Yes.
So I feel like this one is just as cool.
If we can get Buc-ee's to sponsor us, I'll be so happy.
I got a few people in mind. We got Buc-ee's, we got Raising Cane's. I love Raising Cane's. It's like my favorite.
I keep saying if they build a Buc-ee's and a Raising Cane's next to each other, it's like the promised land. I'll die.
I'll just ascend.
I would move for that. Like I would move anywhere in the country for that.
I think I would too. Like I think I even joked the other day about like that's where we would put Crooked Path headquarters was right there.
Absolutely.
It'd be right across the street, and then we'd lose all our money because we spent it on Buc-ee's and Cane's.
Easily.
Well, I think that kind of brings today's episode to a close. So I hope everybody enjoyed it. Can't wait to see everybody again next week for another controversial topic.
Yeah, we can't get around that 2 weeks in a row.
Right?
All right. Have a good night, everybody.
All right. Goodbye.
Bye.